Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see such a huge turnout for our webinar today. The title of the session says it all, from AI strategy to AI native operations. We're going to give you some insights in how to determine your AI strategy and then how to fast track that into building an AI native organization. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive in. But first, I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have from the University of Ghent, Thomas Standaert, who is a postgraduate research fellow and one of the co-authors of the 2025 AI Barometer report. I also have with me from ML6, Francesco Cilurzo, who is our advisory principal, AI strategy specialist, and I myself am Limère, domain owner of advisory at ML6. Let me give you a quick run-through of what we're going to cover in this webinar. Thomas will start us off with the key findings of the 2025 AI Barometer on the adoption and the use of AI among Flemish businesses. Francesco will then continue with the fundamentals behind AI strategy and the 5 key questions you should be asking yourself to get started. I will then give you a behind-the-scenes look on how we approach design-led prototyping at ML6 to put those strategies into practice. And Francesco will close the loop on how AI native engineering is changing the way that we build software. There is a Q&A at the end, so feel free to put your questions into the chat. But first, let me start by introducing ML6. ML6 is an AI native market leader in Europe. We do that with over 130 experts in over 5 offices and with 400 projects delivered and 17% of our engineering time dedicated to AI research. With a clear vision of building AI for a better future, we have always been at the frontier. Our focus has been on those technologies before the rest got onto them. For example, when everyone was onto big data, ML6 was focusing on the first steps into artificial intelligence. To then continue with generative AI and large language models, we were one of the first movers of that powerful technology. And then before it was even a thing, we were building agentic systems with those large language models. And also right now, we are looking ahead to what the future could bring us. We are looking at enterprise superintelligence and even robotics taking us into the future. Which brings us to advisory. We are right at the sweet spot between strategy and engineering. We take the full breadth as a strategic partner grounded in the reality of bringing those solutions to production. Without further ado, Thomas, we are very excited to host you and give you a platform to give you the results of your extensive research on AI adoption in Flanders.
Thanks, Nick. Together with my colleagues at Ghent University, I am responsible for the AI Barometer, in which we monitor the adoption, use, and expertise in AI in Flemish firms. The Barometer is commissioned and funded by the Flemish government since 2021 and is conducted every 2 years. The last data collection taking place in the summer of 2025. Our insights are not based on case interviews or a small-scale survey, but rather on a large representative sample of Flemish firms in a variety of manufacturing and service sectors. For this, we have developed a questionnaire, which is based on the Eurostat questionnaire, but adds to this more fine-grained questions on the adoption and use of AI. Let's kick off with the headline statistic. In 2025, the number of Flemish firms adopting AI had doubled since 2023. This suggests an interest in AI. Yet, still more than 1 in 4 firms neither uses AI nor plans to adopt it. Later in this presentation, I will dive into the reasons why firms decide to not adopt AI. Going back to the group of AI adopters, we found that Gen AI and NLP are the most popular technologies as of now. There is significant interest in adopting technologies in the near future, especially for machine learning and process automation. The adoption of AI is not evenly distributed across sectors and firm size classes. It probably does not come as a surprise that the IT sector is leading the way when it comes to adopting various AI technologies. Two sectors that are also adopting multiple AI technologies more than average are the real estate, liberal professions, and scientific and technical activity services, as well as the financial activities and insurance sector. For some sectors, firms are mainly focused on using one technology. This is the case for the administrative and support services sector using NLP, and manufacturing firms using autonomous machines. Importantly, we find that smaller firms, as measured by their headcount, lag behind large firms when it comes to the adoption of AI technologies. We now know where AI technologies are used. The next question is who is leading the use of AI in Flemish firms? We find that in around half of firms adopting AI, the initiative regarding AI is with employees. Only in about 1 in 4 firms, the initiative is with management. We can conclude from this that management too often takes a passive role when it comes to AI use. Yet, an active role of management is required to align AI with business objectives. For firms where employees were not leading AI use, we asked how AI was used. In around half of the cases, firms were still only experimenting with AI. For 1 in 3 firms, AI has been successfully implemented or integrated in their processes. Still, a smaller percentage of firms has moved from successful implementation or integration in processes to the scaling of AI solutions across multiple domains in their business. Overall, large firms and firms active in IT or administrative and support services have been more successful at moving from experimentation to integration/implementation and scaling of AI solutions. Successful experimentation with AI use cases requires knowledge, skills, and experience, and this is exactly what is lacking for more than 60% of firms. The required knowledge, skills, and experience is multidimensional and touches, amongst others, upon aspects of firms' ability to translate business needs into technical specifications for AI solutions, the ability to assess the profitability of AI solutions, and the ability to assess the technical feasibility of these AI solutions. An important second-order barrier to AI adoption and use are legal aspects and the availability of good data. For what activities in the firm's value chain is AI now used? Likely as a result of the increase in adoption of Gen AI and NLP technologies, the use of AI for the organization of administrative processes, marketing and sales, and the development of new technologies, products, and services has increased spectacularly since 2023. Large and medium-sized firms are more proficient at deploying AI across multiple activities of their value chain. For AI deployment to be successful, it should contribute to a firm's competitiveness. AI has the potential to facilitate process innovation by either increasing the quality or reducing the cost of firm processes. AI can also facilitate product innovation by facilitating the development of new or significantly improved products or services. For 65% of firms adopting AI, AI has led to at least one of these performance improvements. We also find that performance improvements are more likely when firms have successfully experimented, implemented, or scaled AI solutions. To wrap this part up, I present you with a recap of the most important insights of the latest AI Barometer. First, AI adoption is on the rise in Flemish firms, but management is too often not actively involved, preventing AI from being aligned with business objectives. Second, the majority of AI adopters are in an embryonic stage of AI use, meaning that they are only experimenting with AI use cases. The major barrier to both the development of an AI strategy and the successful experimentation with AI is the lack of knowledge, skills, and experience. To help fill these knowledge gaps, knowledge partners can play a key role. They could assist firms in improving their data stewardship, identify relevant AI use cases, and help them with the technical implementation of AI solutions. Thank you for your attention. I will now pass the baton to Francesco.
All right, so in Thomas's research, we saw an important pattern. The fact that management is not always close enough and a bit passive in the choices being made. So, okay, the AI adoption is rising, but in many companies, the initiative still starts too much from individual employees or isolated teams. So for the management teams that are starting to take charge and taking action, I want to do a short reality check. Are we really doing ready, aim, fire and giving the company a clear direction? Or are we just loosely experimenting? And so I want to start with this quote of Mark Twain, and I like this quote because it keeps us a little bit humble. So we all think we are special, and every major technological shift feels really unique when you are in the middle of it. But we don't always need to listen to the futurists. We can also learn a lot from the past, actually. And there are a few familiar patterns that we see. And one of them is that every time there's a new technology, companies start to think about, okay, what can we do with this new thing? But the better question to ask is, what does this new thing actually force us to rethink? Because this is not the first time that companies have had to rethink their complete operating model. During the industrial revolutions, companies had to ask new questions like, how do we organize production at scale? How do we manage our supply chain, our factories, our workforce, etc.? And then in the 2000s, during the digital revolutions, companies had to ask other questions like, okay, what happens if our customers and our competitors have access to all information all of the time? And which customer journeys move online when our customers are always connected, etc. But now AI brings another shift, and you could argue even more profound. So if intelligence itself becomes commoditized, then the question is not, okay, where can we add AI? The question is actually, which part of our business is designed around the assumption that intelligence itself is scarce or expensive? And what changes when that assumption no longer holds? And so talking about history rhyming, we have seen this movie before. In the digital transformation wave, many companies started digitizing what already existed. So a newspaper, for example, offered a digital PDF-readable version on their website. Okay, very useful, but that's not the real full transformation. The bigger shift happens when companies actually start redesigning the model itself. And I like the example of music, where we used to buy CDs, bundled products, and then iTunes, Apple started digitizing the album and started selling songs individually, but still in the traditional ownership model. But then Spotify came on the market and completely changed the logic. So from owning music to accessing music, and from buying albums and songs to actually subscribing to a service. This is real transformation. And actually, the same pitfall is happening with AI. So many organizations are using AI to make their current way of working a bit more efficient. And it's valuable, it saves time, etc. But, and to be clear, these examples are not too bad, right? So you need to give your employees a Copilot license, you have to have a chatbot on your website, you need to automate your process, etc. But if we stop there, we're just automating today's operating model. And we're not asking the question, okay, does this operating model still make sense? So AI optimization, the first step is, okay, how can we use AI to make the as-is better? But the real transformation happens when we answer the question, okay, should this process still exist in this form at all? And okay, part of the complexity is that AI touches basically every aspect of your operating model. It touches your internal processes, how people work, how they make decisions. It touches your products and services, how your offerings become more smart, more personal, more adaptive, etc. It also touches your customers, because customers themselves will also start using AI to search, compare, decide, and even act. It touches competition because the same tools are becoming available to basically everyone as well. And it also touches the technology ecosystem because platforms and your software vendors are also starting to capture more and more of the value for themselves. So the leadership question that you need to ask is, okay, is not do we do AI? It's not even which of these use cases make sense, but actually the challenge is, okay, where do we optimize and where do we selectively transform because you can't transform everything at the same time. And so that's why AI strategy feels really difficult. The solution space is huge. There are a lot of use cases. There are a lot of tools. Everybody has ideas. And also the technology keeps changing while you're trying to actually understand it. And so the first failure mode is ready, fire, aim, right? So you start launching local AI initiatives without direction. Some work, some don't, some overlap. And after a while, you find yourself with a lot of fragmented pilot projects, but not really a compounding advantage. And the opposite failure mode is also very dangerous. Some companies try to wait and define the perfect AI strategy before doing anything meaningful. They want this 100% foolproof blueprint, but actually they want certainty in a market that is still constantly moving and changing. So that sounds like it's disciplined, but it can turn into paralysis. So basically, we don't want to fire without aiming, but also we don't want to aim forever, right? So we need enough direction under uncertainty to make smart bets and enough experimentation to keep learning. Okay, so the challenge then is, okay, but how do you then choose? And so instead of asking what is our strategy in the abstract, we suggest actually to ask 5 more concrete questions. And so together these questions will help you define what kind of company you want to become in a market that is increasingly shaped by AI. And also, maybe I want you to take mental note of these 5 questions, and I would invite you to bring these questions to your next board or leadership meeting, not to get the perfect answer immediately, but just to listen where the silences are. And so this uncomfortable silence is actually useful. It will tell you where your AI ambition is a bit unclear and where your blind spots are. Okay, so first question, it's an internal one. How do we rewire our company? Right, so at the optimization level, that's what everybody is trying to do. It's really about the foundations. Okay, do we have the right data? Are we offering the right tools to our employees? Do we have the right governance? And how are we training everybody to use AI responsibly? But there is a more strategic level that is about redesigning work itself. And that's what not enough companies are thinking about. Okay, which roles are changing in my organization? Which workflows should no longer exist in their current form? Which important strategic business function, like IT or R&D, should be redesigned around humans and AI working together? So actually, you need to decide where you need to give people better tools, but also where you want to completely redesign your core workflows from scratch. A bit as if you were building the company today with AI availability from day one. Second question, it's about what we sell. So the first way of AI innovation in products and services is often feature-based. Okay, we want to make our products smarter. We want to add a conversational layer, a chatbot. We want to personalize a bit more the experience. But actually, the bigger question is whether the value proposition itself needs to change. Do we keep selling the same service, or do we move more towards outcomes? Do we keep selling expertise by the hour, for example, or do we repackage our expertise into an AI-enabled solution? Do we want to stay reactive, or do we want to become proactive? So this is where AI really stops being only an efficiency topic, but it becomes a real growth topic. The third question is about the customer of tomorrow. So today, most companies are still organized and designed for human customers, clicking, searching, comparing, and reading. But increasingly, these customers themselves will also arrive with their own AI support. They will use copilots to compare suppliers, and in the future, they will even have AI agents to decide and even act on their behalf. So that changes completely what a good service looks like. It's not only about having a better website or faster contact center. It may also require offering machine-readable information, giving conversational access, and enable agent-to-agent interactions. So the strategic question is, okay, when your customer becomes fully AI-enabled, how are you still easy to find and easy to do business with? Fourth question is competitive. So if the same AI capabilities that we talked about become available to every competitor, then simply using AI will not be a differentiator anymore. So everybody can buy the same tools, everybody can automate parts of the business, and everybody can add AI features. So the real strategic question becomes, okay, what remains hard to copy? Is it our data? Is it expertise? Is it our trust position in the value chain? So this is where leadership really needs to be sharp. AI can protect margins, okay, but it can also shift where the value is captured in the market. And then the fifth and the last question is about our position in the technology ecosystem. And so this is really becoming increasingly important because AI capabilities are becoming embedded basically everywhere, in your productivity tools, in your CRM systems, ERP, customer service platforms, etc., even coding tools. But this is a double-edged blade, right? So it's easier to access this capability, but it also creates a sort of strategic dependency. And so at the optimization level, the answer is about, okay, do we build a smart architecture? Are we being modular? Are we being flexible? Are we avoiding unnecessary lock-in to vendors? But at the strategic level, the question becomes more interesting and sharper. The question is, okay, which layer do we want to own in order to avoid becoming a replaceable component in somebody else's tech stack? So do we want to become the customer interface? Do we want to own the orchestration layer? Do we want to build a sort of domain-specific agentic workflow that we own? Do we want to own the outcome, etc.? So this is not purely a technical question. It's actually a strategic question of strategic importance. And so there's obviously no universal right answer. And I give a few examples here on the slide. So for an example firm, for an accounting firm, AI puts pressure on billable hours, for example, and then it pushes the business towards more outcome-based services. For a pharmaceutical company, the opportunity is in the faster learning and innovation cycle in R&D and the better protection of intellectual property. And then for an energy provider, for example, the question may be who owns, okay, the customer interface. And when a customer increasingly uses AI to switch and act through AI agents, that's actually the most important topic to think about. So the AI strategy depends on your field of play. So let's connect this back to the two traps that we saw earlier. On one side, we had the ready, fire, aim trap, so blindly adopting without direction. And on the other side, we had aim, 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 so leadership waiting for the perfect AI blueprint and being paralyzed. But there's actually a third approach. Once you formulate an answer on the 5 questions, it allows you to formulate a clear North Star. And so this North Star is not a detailed master plan, but it's also not just a list of use cases. It's actually a set of guiding ambitions based on the answers to the 5 questions that we just discussed. Right? So this is how we will transform our internal processes. This is how we will improve our services. This is where we will create something new, etc. And so once those ambitions are clear, we can use them to guide us in selecting use cases that have a clear ROI on the short term as well. But we don't evaluate them in isolation anymore. We actually ask the question, okay, how does this use case help us to reinforce the strategic backbone and the direction that we have chosen? So for me, this is a good handover point. So the North Star helps us to avoid random experimentation, but it does not mean, of course, that every use case is automatically a good one. So good use cases still need a connection with reality, with the user, with the actual workflows, even with trust and adoption. And that's what brings us to the next part about design-led prototyping.
Thank you, Francesco. So you have answered those 5 key questions. You're aligned on your sea level, you have your North Star, and you've even defined those first few use cases that you want to focus on. How do we now move at the incredible speed the technology is evolving and guarantee those qualitative, iterative outcomes? So this is not going to be an in-depth course on user-centered design, but we do have to lay the foundation first, as it's so important to build the right thing at the right time. And it will be your user, both internal and external, that will define the success of what you're doing. With a few simple design patterns and ways of thinking, we can achieve that. Because design is more than just a few tricks to the eye, it's actually a few tricks to the brain. So by now, we all know a lot of good design patterns already. Notifications, for example, give you a sense of urgency. The dopamine hits of swiping and matching keeps you engaged. The progress bar nudges you to finish what you started. And the infinite scroll makes sure you never run out of things to do. It's these mechanics that make it fun to use these apps. Of course, it's important to combine it with a positive impact. We all know apps with positive impact that are just terribly designed. I hate having to go to my e-box every time I'm forced to. And we also know the endless fear-mongering of antivirus software, real or not, trying to convince you to spend more money to feel safe. And then there are the apps with good design, which can be used for bad, where cheddar is, through gamification, trying to entice a young crowd into sports betting. But thankfully, there are also those who combine positive impact with good design, like Be My Eyes, which aids people with bad vision through a seamlessly designed experience using AI. So most software is developed with a positive impact in mind, but focused on the technological features. And of course, since software isn't automatically well designed, this needs attention and focus to build a successful product. So let's shift that. In order to do that, we need to start at the end user and spend most of our efforts in truly understanding the need and what drives them. We all know the classical example of building a software project. Someone with the budget for a new app finds very eager engineers who just love to build. With the bare minimum of requirements, we dive into it. Obviously, we spend half the time on data exploration because we learned from the past that garbage in is garbage out. And then we spend practically the other half of the time on building a fully functional forecasting model. As an afterthought, we slap on a UI to then proudly present the work to the end user. Sadly, this is then the first time the user gets confronted with our interpretation of his requirements and his needs. So design thinking turns this around. Spend half the time understanding the user, going into deep interaction, understanding their processes, their needs, and what drives them. And then iterate prototypes with those end users to truly define the successful product upfront. This feels like a much slower process because it takes longer before you actually start coding. However, with the latest technology, this is greatly sped up. While whiteboards and brown papers with Post-its are great, and I've used them a lot in the past, there are tools with native AI capabilities which greatly speed up this process. At ML6, we have chosen Miro as our go-to tool to map user journeys and our design sessions, the workshops that we facilitate with our clients. Because with the out-of-the-box AI features, they make it so that you can spend all your time in conversation with that end user, with the client, instead of having to draw everything out yourself and spending days just going through the materials and fine-tuning it. So seamlessly transforming your journey mappings and design thinking templates has never been easier. It can easily be brought into features, user stories, roadmap, everything you need to build that successful product. And then if there's one key takeaway that I want you to get from this webinar, it's that in everything you do, you should ask yourself the question, how can I do this with AI? Use those out-of-the-box AI tools. And for the next part of the design phase, the prototyping, AI is also giving you an entirely new tool set to work with. At ML6, we're using Lovable as a go-to prototyping tool, and we will give you some Lovable best practices as well as our own learnings to get the most out of AI native prototyping. I promise you this will feel like magic the first time you use it. The technology is already incredibly powerful. In the demo that you're seeing here, we created for what is a fictional client. You can see the output of less than a day of prompting in Lovable to create this fully functional mock-up of a procurement central hub for one of our clients. The secret, of course, is that we first spend multiple workshops truly understanding all the different needs, actions, and features that will provide true business value. The output is something the client already fell in love with before we started building it. So, some concrete tips to take home with you. First one, iterate. Build one component at a time and make sure that it adheres to the vision that you set before. Next, spend most of your time in plan mode. Co-create this plan together with your AI so that it understands your vision. This also greatly reduces the credits that you will use, as Lovable is a pay-per-use product, and plan modes are 1/10 of the price of a building action. Next, knowledge guardrails. Keep and maintain your vision and ensure that long-term consistency. And last but not least, don't be afraid to experiment. Have stable versions that you can always return to if things were to break. So these are pretty standard Lovable tips, but through our extensive use and experimentation, we have come up with a way to make our prototypes, spoiler alert, ready to be turned into an actual front end instead of just being a nice drawing that goes into the bin. I can't give away all the secrets, of course, but here are a few. The first one, bring your own brand template. It makes it so that users immediately recognize the result and are emotionally connected to it. On the more technical side, nudge AI to create a service layer. That way you can later plug this into real data instead of being stuck into the design mockup data. Always keep security in mind, especially when putting AI services into your product. Make sure those keys are safe. And lastly, use a central translation file. This way your product is ready to be worked on and used by anyone. But perhaps the most important piece of advice is to make sure that your designs are there. Map the mountain before you climb it. So we have both. But do I now find myself copy-pasting screenshots from Miro from design into Lovable and then back? That doesn't feel really AI native. Well, actually, Lovable and Miro now have an integration. So introducing the live connection between Miro and Lovable, it now supports a live connection between the two so that your prototype, Lovable, understands your designs. And when those designs in Miro changes through iteration to future workshops and feedback that you get from the client, we can seamlessly have the prototype evolve in sync. And that is how we get to a true AI native prototype. Design thinking is no longer just a mental exercise. You immediately prototype, iterate, get feedback, and then further fine-tune your design. Fantastic. So these two are now linked. And of course, as good as a prototype might look and feel, this is not a production-ready application yet. AI coding tools are making great strides in building software, but are we now stuck again feeding screenshots from my prototype into a tool like Cursor or Codex? Francesco is going to make the next link by giving you insights in our ML6 AI native engineering way of working. Francesco, take it away.
All right, thanks, Nick. So a lot of conversations around AI quickly move towards, okay, all the sexy use cases, the new products, the autonomous agents, etc. But actually, there is one ROI lever that is already very visible today, and that's software delivery. So every company is software dependent in some way. Every company has internal platforms, data infrastructure, and soon every company will also have AI applications. And so the success of all this depends on the ability to design, build, and test software. And this is where AI is already really changing the operating model and the economics. And so the meter benchmark on the left side on this slide is useful because it shows a clear direction. So AI systems are becoming more and more capable of handling longer and more complex tasks over time. And so for ML6, this is not just an interesting chart. It's actually the fact that coding is one of the tasks that is the most heavily disrupted because of this. Because AI agents are now becoming better at coding than any human can. So when AI actually changed the way that software is made and code is written, it really hit the core of how we create value as a company. So this really pushed us to reinvent ourselves in the past year. And so we enthusiastically started adopting and experimenting with these AI coding tools. And at first, the upside was actually very obvious. We felt immediate productivity gains. But after a while, these second-order effects started to show up. So as your velocity and your speed goes up, in many cases, actually, the maintainability and the quality of your code drastically goes down. And we also saw some over-reliance creep in. So if you only use AI code to review AI-generated code, then actually your controls start to slip. And so that put us a bit at the crossroads as an organization. So first of all, we had a lot of momentum, adoption in some leading teams. But actually scaling across the remaining 90% of the organization was a challenge. So people were being left behind. Also, these velocity gains were coming at the cost of quality. So we had a rising technical debt, where we had this negative feedback loop where these AI systems base themselves on the code that already exists. So bad code leads to even more AI slop. And then the last thing was that, okay, you had this silent erosion of quality and security controls as teams were becoming a bit over-reliant on AI output and AI reviews. So, and I like to use the metaphor of the car speeding on the highway at 200 an hour. It's fast, it's exciting, but you can't imagine that you continue like this without something really bad happening down the line. And so, to be completely transparent, this change was hard for us as well. So we started with doing an internal survey, and we were a bit surprised by the feedback that we received. So we saw, first of all, that the collaboration patterns started to change and that mentorship weakened. So where first you had a junior developer that was very closely coached by a senior developer, now this dynamic started to change where juniors were just churning out AI-generated code and seniors became a sort of bottleneck of reviewing AI-generated code, where we also saw that there was a bit of atrophy of knowledge where juniors were not really learning the skills that it needed to write good code, to solve problems, etc. So the sentiment was really, really heterogeneous. So we're not coming with the simplistic, okay, AI will solve everything narrative. We actually come with some scar tissue ourselves. And so that's the reason why we started to think in two speeds, a bit like a peloton where you have the back and the front of the peloton. So the back of the peloton was the AI native engineering part, basically answering the question, okay, what can and basically must we do with AI? So here we installed a sort of non-negotiable baseline of tooling, best practices, quality standards, etc., that we expect the whole organization to adhere to. But at the front of the peloton, we had pioneers, humans at the frontier, that try to answer the question, okay, where do you still need humans? So these are specialized teams that are really far in the AI-first mindset that really try to push the boundary of what is possible with AI in engineering and in code and in development. So if you only focus on the back of the peloton, you become a bit too cautious. But if you focus only on the frontier, you get a bit reckless and there is chaos. So the trick is to find these two speeds and to have the pioneers push ahead while the rest of the organization keeps moving in a controlled way. And that also means that we could not treat the whole software lifecycle in the same way. Some activities should obviously still be human only. Some are more like a human in command, so AI can support, but the human is very clearly the person who decides. Some are human in the loop, where AI does a big part of the work, and then there's an active human review that is deliberate. And some become even more human on the loop, where AI becomes more and more autonomous, and humans monitor outcomes and exceptions more from a distance. What we also did is we built Nimbus as a sort of internal technical abstraction layer for AI native engineering. And so the idea behind Nimbus is simple. We try to capture what good looks like, and we make it reusable across the company. And so first of all, Nimbus brings together some quick start scripts, some playbooks, some best practices. So it helps teams to get started a bit faster with the right structure. but also it creates shareable context that both humans and agents, AI agents, can understand through things like agent.md files and skills. So these basically codify the instructions for AI agents and make them readable both for the agents and for humans. And so basically we want junior and senior engineers to work effectively with AI without losing engineering discipline. We want speed, but not at the expense of quality and learning. And so Nimbus became basically our way to encode and codify this balance into our technical stack. And now I guess the most difficult question is how do we measure this? It's I guess the most hot topic right now in AI native engineering. And this is where I like the metaphor on the slide, the blind man and the elephant. So if you have blind men around the elephant, if you take the trunk, you think it's a snake. If you take the leg, you think it's a tree. If you touch the belly, you think it's a wall. And so basically, the same happens when you discuss ROI in an AI native engineering context. An engineer will say, I code much faster. The business will say, okay, we ship more features. Finance will ask, okay, where is my margin improvement? And then you have the quality team saying, okay, but we need more review effort and the technical debt is rising. And so that's why we try to measure AI impact across 4 dimensions. So the developer speed, it matters, but it's only a part of the story. And that's why we look beyond developer speed. So we also measure system quality and technical depth. And actually that's the counterweight of velocity. So they are basically communicating vessels where if you increase velocity, you actually you reduce the quality. So these two are actually counterweights of each other. We also measure the adoption, so how well these best practices are actually adopted amongst team. And so these are actually the activation function and the prerequisite to cash in on the gains from productivity and system quality. And then of course, last, business impact. The rest doesn't matter and doesn't make sense if it actually doesn't deliver in our case, projects faster or creates better margins on our projects, etc. So we're not measuring individuals, we are actually measuring whether our new engineering system as a whole is becoming healthier, faster, safer, more adopted, and more valuable to the business. Okay, and so taking a step back, my broader point with all these examples is, okay, AI native engineering, it's not about rolling out a tool, it's actually changing the company. And it's not enough to say, okay, we have this tool now, we roll it out, everybody has access, good luck. You actually need a vision, otherwise people get confused. You need consensus or people resist. You need incentives or people don't change their habits, etc. And that's why this really requires a real transformational approach. And so we started with the image of the speeding car on the highway. And so the goal of ML6 was not to slow everything down, of course. Actually, the goal was to turn that speeding car into a high-speed train. So we are still fast, maybe even faster, but we are doing it safer with guardrails, with a shared direction. And maybe even more importantly, it's not just one person driving alone, but actually it's the whole company and all the carts moving together. I want to close with this, but side remark, we have built this approach internally at ML6 because basically we had to, but actually we also offer it as a consulting track to companies. So we took all these learnings that we have and we turned it into a reproducible approach that we can now implement with companies that want to make their development lifecycle AI native.
All right. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Thomas. That was very inspiring. Of course, there's only so much that we can put into a 1-hour webinar. We do already see some questions coming into the chat. Feel free to put some more in there. If you want to know more about this, and we can assist you, of course, with our advisory services, there's a QR code up right now, or you can visit the websites. And I do already want to announce the next webinar, which is going to be a webinar on ChatGPT apps, which is redefining traditional click endpoint web browsing. Make sure to enroll into that one as well. We'll just take a quick second to change our setup to then efficiently answer your questions. Thank you. All right. I'm seeing that even more people have joined since we started the webinar, so that's great to see. And a couple of questions have already been asked. Again, feel free to post more in there. I would actually like to start with question number 2. Is Flanders a frontrunner or a follower in terms of AI adoption, which also links to question number 1. So for this, I'm going to give the word to Thomas.
Thanks, Nick. Also, thanks for asking the question, Maiwen. To give an answer to this question, I can benchmark the adoption rates of AI in Flanders vis-a-vis the adoption rates across the whole of Europe. So Eurostat does a similar survey on AI adoption within European states. And here we consistently find Belgium, because of course Belgium is measured, and Flanders adoption rates are on average a little bit higher compared to the southern part of our country. We find Belgium to be consistently in 4th place when it comes to AI adoption. So the frontrunners, European frontrunners in AI adoption, together with Flanders, then we can consider them to be the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, as well as Flanders. I will also answer the first question, which compares AI adoption rates and AI maturity in Flanders vis-a-vis the United States. There are no direct statistics on AI maturity in the US. Some of the headlines on AI failures or successes are mostly based on anecdotal evidence. There's some MIT studies floating around about the failure rates of these Gen AI pilot projects. But what we can say about the situation in Europe in general and the US versus the US is that AI adoption rates in the US are on average much higher than in the European Union. Then we can also indirectly provide an answer to the question, because when we look at the labor productivity figures, and more specifically, the increase in labor productivity in the US, this happens at a much higher rate compared to Europe. So that means that AI is being used in the US on a much more efficient scale. And according to our research, we find that these productivity improvements only happen when AI experiments are successful, when AI solutions are being implemented and integrated in the processes, and when AI starts being scaled across other domains of the company. So this is happening at a much higher rate in the US vis-a-vis the European Union. So there's a lot of ground to cover for these European countries. Comparing also the situation in the Scandinavian countries versus Belgium or Flanders more specifically, we're also at a disadvantage when it comes to lifelong learning. When you want to build AI solutions, you got to involve your employees. And research has consistently shown that Belgium is trailing when it comes to lifelong learning. And the Nordic countries, again, not only show these higher high adoption rates, but they also show high lifelong learning rates. So I think we're going to have to invest more in these trainings in AI. Also, of course, have management prioritize AI adoption and use in order to cross the gap.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. All right, we have many more questions coming in. I would just take them chronologically for now. So Koen van Loo asks, how is ML6 transforming itself based on AI? Francesco, if you could elaborate that just a bit more on top of what has already been said, of course.
So I think the big focus is on AI native engineering, because that's basically our core business. But we also have a decentralized program where we, in each department, look at use cases that are relevant for finance, for sales, for marketing, etc. So from one side, we are reinventing our business model. That's the AI native engineering part. And on the other hand, we're rewiring the business, as I mentioned in my talk, and we're empowering basically every department to think about exciting use cases in their space.
Okay, thank you. I see two interesting questions about junior developers as well. I'm going to take those. So Maiwen asks, can the 70-30 plan mode be effectively enforced for your junior developers who are incentivized by vibe coding speed? So there's another question by Maxime. Does AI native engineering reduce the need for junior developers? I think this is a very important question. I think what we see is that there's a big risk that AI is taking out the bottom half of the career ladder, and we need to be very aware of that because, well, even in the future, we're going to need our senior developers who are able to get the most out of these AI tools. So I think it's a question of incentives. For example, for the plan mode, I think it's much more important that junior developers understand their codes, and you do that by going into planning mode and drawing out a path of what this solution is going to look like, much more than the actual output of the code or the volume of it. And the incentive for the companies is, like I said before, I think it's much more important to have your juniors have this learning path and get them to the seniors that you will need tomorrow. So I think this really, this ties into this holistic view that you really need to have on AI native way of working within your organization. You need to think beyond just how can this tool speed me up today. We need to make sure that we have the people who are capable and keeping this product and solutions running tomorrow as well. All right. I hope that answers the question. We have a couple on token costs and how to manage those. Francesco, could I pass that one on to you?
Yeah, part of what we do is to keep it observable. I think that's I think the most important tip there. I think we want to avoid people becoming loose cannons. And actually, it's one of the metrics that we keep a track of, right? It's about the output in relationship to the amount of tokens that somebody uses. So a sort of efficiency metric on tokens used vs qualitative code generated. So I think that's an important metric to keep it observable and to keep an eye on, let's say.
Yeah, indeed. If I can add to that, and that also links to one of the other questions that was asked, what does it cost on average per employee to give them the right AI tooling? Additional license costs might create tension with IT. And I think historically IT has always been seen as this cost center, but I do think I would like to turn it around and advise you to look at it from a business case perspective. How can this provide additional business value? And I think we are at a paradigm shift where for the first time, IT can shift from being a cost center, which might increase with new licenses, etc., into such a speedy and efficient machine that they will no longer be the bottleneck. Instead, they will be the driver of innovation, and it will be business who needs to keep up with ideas and have that strategy defined and knowing what the next thing is that you should be working on. So I think it's very exciting times to see IT being the driver of innovation instead of the bottleneck. All right, a couple more questions. I think question number 7 here, Francesco, I'd like to pose to you. From Laszlo, beyond the obvious explanation that some companies implement AI poorly, what do you see as the second or third most important reason why AI investments fail so often to produce significant productivity gains?
But there's been some research done on this as well. It's the research that Thomas mentioned as well. I think the biggest reasons are organizational reasons. So not putting enough effort on the change management. I know it's a bit run down, the the argument, but if people feel that their job is at risk or they don't trust AI solutions, then it's very hard to actually implement them. So yeah, we would really advocate to touch the topics of today, right? So doing design first, so thinking about the end user, seeing that you really solve a problem, and putting in place really good change management and even usage policies, etc. To get the organization along. It's actually a human problem. It's not a technical problem, right? It's not about implementation. It's about getting your organization along. For me, that's the biggest learning. If you want to take something away from today, it's the biggest learning that we have.
Thank you. That also ties into question number 9. Alexandra makes the suggestion that in my organization, collaboration also dropped with the introduction of AI coding assistants. We now tend to brainstorm with AI instead of with colleagues, resulting in fragmented knowledge, less consistency, etc. Any tips on how to overcome this? I think that's closely linked to that. I do think this is, like Francesco just said, this is very much a human problem. This is about adoption and fostering collaboration. And I do think that having your ambassador network on this is so crucial to foster the innovative mindset, but as well as the that this knowledge should be shared across the company. And that's both from just learning experience, etc., but also making sure that in whatever tools that you are using, that the necessary context is in there. And that might be something that your colleague has done. It needs to be a shared context that the AI is aware of in order for your work to also be in line with everything else that is being done.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've learned with the AI native engineering as well, is that you need to move away from individual tools and people being isolated in their little sandbox, but you need to share contexts, in fact, on a technical level, context-wise. I think that's really useful.
All right, I think we're almost through the questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them into the chat. I think I'm onto the last one already. Juvenal asks, have you seen that architectural and operational design being overlooked and teams jumping directly into AI experimenting and coding? Of course, that is definitely why we put design thinking in there. That's existed before AI and has only become more important. I think that you need to think about what you are going to do. Of course, there's definitely a place for experimentation, and that was one of the tips on the Lovable part as well. Feel free to experiment. Make sure that you have this point that you can go back to if the experiment fails. But it's so much more important because the output is so fast that you have this path, that you have your architecture in place to make sure that you're building towards a sustained future. All right, I think, and we're also at the end of our webinar, so that it's actually perfectly timed. I would like to thank everyone again for attending this. We are going to put this content up online, which you will get notified of very soon. If you want to rewatch something that was very interesting, feel free to do so. And again, I want to remind everyone of the upcoming webinar on ChatGPT Enterprise apps. Thank you again.